Before we get started, you know domaintools.com, right? I can type whois.sc/domain name really fast, and I do it daily, but until recently, I didn't know how powerful their other tools were. If I want a domain name, I can set a free alert to notify me when it changes status. If it goes to auction, I can use their sales history tool to find comps and determine my maximum bid price. If I buy it and develop the domain name into a business, I can set up alerts for any domains registered that contain my trademark, and I can set up registrant alerts of all my competitors so I can keep an eye on what domains they're buying and know what they're up to before they make any announcements. DomainTools.com needs to be in your toolbox like it's in mine. Go sign up for an account on DomainTools.com today. My second sponsor is David E. Weslow at Wiley Rhine. Imagine having a legal issue like a UDRP or a cease and desist. Imagine having to get an agreement put together quickly for buying or selling a domain name. And imagine going to your family lawyer who just doesn't get it, or one of the expensive law firms in your city who are going to invoice you for thousands upon thousands of dollars. Then imagine going to David E. Weslow, who will understand your domain name portfolio and your intellectual property assets, understand the domain name environment, and be able to help you out quickly. David E. Weslow. I recommend him. I trust him. I suggest you give him a call. Your initial consultation is free. David E. Weslow at Wiley Rhine. Finally, our newest sponsor is Protrader, the domain exchange. Protrader is an amazing new platform for professional domainers and newcomers alike. Protrader makes trading domain names easy. With just a few clicks, you can analyze, bid, buy, and sell domains across all of the major marketplaces, including Namejet, GoDaddy, SnapNames, and Craigslist. You can also develop stagnating domains you own into great-looking, content-rich, socially active websites that will rank at Google and Bing. This tool is more comprehensive than any other I've seen. If you only use it for its 21 powerful buying filters, you'll get your money's worth. Get your free 14-day trial now at protrada.com. Protrada.com. Here's your program. Hey everyone, my name is Michael Seiger and I'm the publisher of DomainSherpa.com, the domain name authority and the place where you can learn about the domain name industry directly from the experts themselves. People know that DomainSherpa loves its sponsors. We only accept sponsorships from the companies that we believe in. For example, we think DomainTools.com has the best research tools in the industry, and we use them daily, and we use their screenshots of their tools in the how-to articles that we publish on the website. Today, we're joined by David E. Weslow, an attorney with Wiley Rhine who specializes in domain name and intellectual property law. As you can see on DomainSherpa.com, David is a valued sponsor, helping us educate the world on the inner workings of the domain name industry. He followed the ICANN 41 proceedings, for example, and then joined us to help understand the impact of ICANN's vote. On this show, David is joining us to help entrepreneurs, startups, and domain investors understand more about the legal issues related to domain names. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Michael, for having me.
It's my pleasure. So I got to start off with a short notice for our audience. In this interview, David's going to provide us with general information about legal developments. He will not be providing legal advice or legal opinions. Be sure to consult an attorney for any specific legal questions that you have. All right, now that I've got that out of the way, David, you've been practicing domain name and intellectual property law since 1999, but you're not just textbook trained. You've actually been on the internet, you've worked on the internet as a webmaster, and you've worked at an internet high-flier.com business in the past. Let's go back in time a little bit and tell our audience, where were you a webmaster?
Sure. Well, I started developing websites way back when you had to actually write the code to generate the site. I think it was 94 or 95. At home, creating some of those very rudimentary sites with a few hyperlinks here and there, the occasional script, but pretty basic stuff. And then as I was at an undergrad at my college, Elon College in North Carolina, I was the either the first or the second webmaster of the school. So building the actual first website for the school. And in those days, that also involved a lot of education for professors and administration. Well, what is the internet? What are websites? And what do you mean a hyperlink? And where is it going to take me? Type of thing. So that was my real start in web development. That would have been 1996.
And those were the early days. I remember I was doing my my master's, I think, in '95, and I remember learning about the internet and web pages really getting into the web pages for the first time, and you had to remember the IP addresses of certain websites at my university. It was definitely a fun time.
That's right.
So back in the heydays of the .com, just before the bust in late 99, 2000, you worked at a company called youwinit.com. Is that correct?
That's right. So I worked in the legal department, and at that point I had been pursuing both web development and legal interests, and I thought, there might be a place out there for a lawyer who understood the internet and understood websites and had the opportunity to join a private company, as you mentioned, youwinit.com, then, and worked in the legal department looking at both intellectual property issues specific to the internet and also online advertising issues. So that was also an interesting experience. It was fun to be in the .com era during the heyday. Very different than I think the way businesses are run today, but it was a great experience.
Now, what is it that YouWinit did? I couldn't find any information on them in my pre-interview research.
Sure. You may recall in the late 90s, there were a few companies that offered, in essence, search engine services. But in order to run a search, you had to subscribe to the service, and each time you searched on their site, you were enrolled in a contest. There were prizes. They could be giveaways, monetary awards, things of that nature. And as you enrolled, you could accrue points and redeem them for all sorts of things. And you were also opting in to receive advertising from the company. So that was their specialty. Their niche was search coupled with advertisements.
Wow. So there were quite a few legal issues that you had to wrestle with during your time at youwinit.com.
Yeah, that's right. There were a lot of interesting issues that came up. It was a good job.
Great. All right. So you started you started a practice in domain name and intellectual property law. You currently work with Wiley Ryan. What types of clients do you work with today?
My practice, and I've practiced in this area for about 10 years now, has spanned everything from everyone from individuals to a representative Fortune 20 company and all types of businesses in between. So really have covered working with a wide range of individuals and businesses as they have issues that come up that relate to my area.
Okay, so whether somebody is a Fortune 50 company that's having some legal issues and they don't know how to, deal with cyber squatters who may have some typo domain names of theirs, or an individual like myself who runs a small business and received, for example, a cease and desist letter related to intellectual property or something, you would be able to help everything in between.
That's right, and I think I probably have represented all of those folks and everyone in between on both sides of all of those issues you mentioned.
Great. And so you've handled lawsuits, you've handled UDRP cases, all those types of cases?
That's right.
All right, so we're going to dig into a little bit of all those cases. So during today's interview, I really want to go into a lot of different areas that are going to benefit entrepreneurs, startups, and domain investors. I want to talk about buy-sell agreements. I want to talk about some issues related to startups and how you started up. We're going to talk about domain developers. If you're developing out your websites with content, maybe using auto-blogging content software, there's some issues that David and I spoke about in a pre-interview that is going to be really important for you to pay attention to. We'll also talk about some defensive domain name strategies, and then also some UDRP and lawsuits and issues like that. So we'll go into some different examples. So David, let's start by talking about buy-sell agreements. I've bought domain names. I've sold domain names. When I buy domain names, I use a contract that I've used for years. When I sell domain names, I either don't use a contract at all or I use the buyer's contract. How are buy and sell agreements for domain names different if I was the buyer versus if I was the seller?
Sure. Well, with any type of business transaction, a lot is going to depend on the terms of the deal. So who's got the leverage? If you're the buyer, how badly do you want that particular domain name, and what type of deal do you think you are getting for it at the price you've agreed on? And the same thing from the seller's side. How great of a deal are you getting? And then, that largely will determine what you should be thinking about in your agreements. As a buyer, dependent upon what you want to do with the domain name, you may want to think about things such as, well, is this a brandable domain name? And if so, are you having the seller transfer any intellectual property rights, particularly trademark rights, to you so that you can continue to brand that domain name? Would you be concerned, for example, if the seller were to go out and register the plural of whatever that domain name is and immediately put up a business and start competing with you? If you're acquiring together with the domain name the website, are you making sure that you're acquiring the code so that you can transfer the site to your server? Are you making sure that content hasn't been borrowed or misappropriated from someone else, so that when you buy the domain name and the site, you're not immediately going to be sued? So a lot of those different factors come into play based on what you want to do with the domain name and what your intentions are. And as the seller, the same thing. You want to be careful to read if there's an agreement and make sure that you're not overcommitting to things, that everything that's in there is accurate. That if you're conveying a website with the domain name, that you do have the rights to that website. It depends on the terms of the business deal, what you're going to want to put in that domain name sale agreement.
Okay.
And another interesting wrinkle is we see more and more domain names being used as security for loans. So a lot of buyers, it's important to consider, is there some type of security interest, a bank loan, on that domain name? Do you need to include in the agreement something indicating that the domain name's free and clear of liens? That can be a particularly challenging issue to work through if a lien pops up down the road that you didn't know about on the domain name. And from the seller's side, you want to think about how did you acquire the domain name? Are you sure that when you acquired it, there were no liens, so that you're not then in trouble by reselling it and an issue that comes up based on whatever someone did before you had it?
That's a great point. I've never thought about liens, and especially when you get into, the five-figure domain names, the $50,000 domain names and above, there may actually be a lien on there. There might have been a partnership that dissolved 5 years ago, and one partner forgot about the domain name, and the other one, had it registered to him or her, and then later sold it. That first partner could come back and say, hey, I actually own part of that domain name, or I have, some ownership aspect. So that may come in, or it actually could be a legal lien on it.
Yeah, that's right. Either of those situations, you make a good point that if there was a prior business that's dissolved